Hello everyone, and welcome to my BNB CBS Gossip 24 channel. RJ stands firm in the doorway of Brooke's living room, the Los Angeles sun pouring in behind him like a limelight he no way asked for, his hands pulsing as he gently rests one on the small shoulder of the boy beside him, a child far too quiet for his age, eyes too observant, carrying the weight of secrets he no way chose, while Brooke, mid-stride with a smile formerly forming because she thinks this is just another bone of RJ's surprises, another awkward but inoffensive moment between mama and son, suddenly senses commodity is wrong when RJ doesn't joke, doesn't redirect, doesn't smile, and rather quaffs hard as if every word lodged in his throat might shatter him from the inside out, and she laughs vocally at first, confused, asking what this is, asking who the sprat is, assuming perhaps it's a friend's child, perhaps a model's whoreson, perhaps some charity thing he forgot to mention, but RJ doesn't answer right down, and that silence, thick, suffocating, enduring, fills the room until indeed the walls feel to lean in, hearkening, staying, and RJ eventually exhales like he's been holding his breath for times and says her name, Mama, not in the casual way he always does, but heavy, reverent, final, and Brooke's smile falters because she hears it also, hears the farewell hidden inside that single syllable, and she asks again, slower now, sharper, RJ, who's this? And RJ kneels in front of the boy, meeting his eyes, quietly asking authorization, quietly apologizing for the world he's about to upend, and the child nods because he has always known this moment would come, because secrets do'n't stay buried ever, especially not bones born of love and fear and poltroonery, and RJ stands again, gashes burning his eyes as he turns back to Brooke, whose face has gone pale, whose instincts are screaming indeed before her mind can catch up, and also RJ says the words that stop time, that resolve her reality into, that turn memory into a minefield, Mama this is my son, and Brooke doesn't breathe, doesn't blink, doesn't move, her body replying before her heart can indeed begin to reuse the magnitude of what she's just heard, because those 4 words echo louder than any laugh, louder than any treason she has ever endured, and suddenly the room spins as decades of fatherhood flash before her eyes, every scraped knee she kissed, every lullaby she sang, every immolation she made for RJ, all colliding violently with the insolvable verity that her baby had a baby, that her son carried a life she no way knew was, that nearly in the time she allowed she knew him, she missed commodity so enormous it now stands in front of her, small and fragile and real, and she whispers no not because she doesn't believe him but because she does, because denial is the only thing keeping her upright, and RJ's voice cracks as he explains, as the levee eventually breaks, telling her about the girl he loved in secret, about the fear of ruining his future, about the night everything changed, about the choice he allowed he was making for the right reasons, about how he stayed down but no way stopped loving, no way stopped watching from a distance, no way stopped transferring plutocrat anonymously, no way stopped waking up every single day knowing he was failing someone who didn't indeed know his name, and Brooke listens in horror and heartache, her hands shaking as she looks at the boy. Again, really looks this time, and sees RJ's eyes gaping back at her, sees the cock of his smile, the same dimple, the same quiet perceptivity, and it devastates her because this child isn't just evidence of RJ's secret, he's evidence of how important pain her son carried alone, and she feels wrathfulness also, white-hot, righteous, wrathfulness at RJ for lying, for stealing her chance to help, to cover, to love, but that wrathfulness fractures incontinently when she sees him crying, sees the shame etched into every line of his face, and she realizes he didn't hide this because he didn't trust her, he hid it because he didn't trust himself, because he was scarified of getting a disappointment, scarified of repeating the miscalculations of the men who came before him, and when the boy eventually speaks, his voice small but steady as he says hi grandma, Brooke breaks fully, collapsing to her knees as a sob gashes out of her casket, because in that moment the secret becomes commodity additional entirely, not just a disclosure but an heritage, not just a shock but an alternate chance, and she wraps her arms around the child, holding him as if she can make up for lost times through sheer force of love, brooding justifications she doesn't indeed completely understand yet, apologizing for not knowing, for not being there, for the pain he no way should have carried, and RJ watches, torn piecemeal by guilt and relief, knowing he has destroyed one interpretation of their family but perhaps, just perhaps, allowed a nay one to be born, and Brooke looks up at him through gashes, her voice fierce and broken and motherly all at formerly as she tells him that secrets rot from the inside, that he should have trusted her, that she's furious and agonized and proud and devastated all at the same time, because only love could produce commodity this painful and this beautiful. And as the sun sets outside the windows, casting long murk across the room, Brooke realizes that everything she knew about her son, about fatherhood, about control and protection and immolation, has just been rewritten, and RJ realizes that the biggest secret of his life is no longer armament but aground, fragile and intimidating and necessary, and the boy between them, the child who was no way supposed to live in their world, now stands as the inarguable verity that love, no matter how retired, always finds its way home. As the last light of day fades and the living room settles into a heavy twilight silence broken only by Brooke's uneven breathing and the soft, uncertain movements of the boy in her arms, the reality of what has been revealed continues to expand outward like a shockwave, touching everything, changing everything, because now that the words have been spoken and the verity has taken shape, there's no returning to who they were ahead, and Brooke, still kneeling, sluggishly pulls back just enough to look at the child's face again, learning every detail as if hysterical he might evaporate if she blinks too long, noticing the faint scar near his eyebrow, the way his fritters twitch just like RJ's used to when he was nervous, and her heart pangs with a grief that feels strangely backward, mourning times that no way belonged to her but should have, while RJ remains standing, doubtful whether to step closer or give her space, feeling like a guest in a moment that should have been his. Long agone, and Brooke eventually rises, wiping her gashes with a pulsing hand as she straightens her shoulders in that familiar way that signals she's trying to recapture control, though control is now in vision she knows she has lost, and she gestures for them to sit, her voice unsteady but deliberate as she says they need to talk, really talk, not just about what happened but about what happens coming, because this isn't a secret presently, it's a life, and RJ nods. His throat tight as he helps his son onto the settee, sitting beside him but leaving just enough space as if hysterical to claim too much too soon, and the boy sits still, bases hanging, eyes zipping between them, absorbing the emotional weight of grown-ups eventually catching up to a verity he has lived with for times, and Brooke takes the armchair opposite them, folding her hands together as she studies RJ with a admixture of love, disappointment, and fierce concern, asking him when it started, how long he's known, how long the child has known, and each question lands like a concession cell he can no longer escape, so RJ answers everything, from the first moment he set up out to the night he held his son for the first time in secret, to the birthdays he celebrated from hence, the academy prints posted to a P.O. box under a fake name, the leave spent wondering if he was doing the right thing by staying down, and Brooke listens, occasionally closing her eyes, occasionally shaking her head, occasionally pressing her hand to her mouth as if to keep her feelings from discovering over again, and when RJ finishes, the room feels hollowed out, like the story has taken all the air with it, and Brooke exhales sluggishly, her voice quiet but sharp as she tells him that fear may explain his choices but it doesn't abolish the damage, that guarding someone doesn't mean abandoning them, and RJ accepts every word because he has penalized himself with those same studies every day, and also Brooke turns to the boy, softening incontinently, asking his name duly, asking how he's feeling, asking if he's spooked, and he hesitates before answering actually that he was spooked formerly but not presently, that his pater promised effects would change, and Brooke's heart twists again because she realizes this child trusted RJ long before she did, and that consummation humbles her in a way she wasn't prepared for, and she promises him, still and fiercely, that no matter what happens between her and RJ, he's family now, irrevocably, incontrovertibly family, and the boy smiles also, a small but genuine smile that feels like remission being offered before it's indeed been earned, and commodity inside Brooke settles, not because the pain is gone but because love has asserted itself as the only possible response, and as night deepens outdoors, practical realities begin to intrude where the boy will stay, what people will say, how the world will reply when this secret inescapably becomes public, and Brooke knows the scrutiny their family lives under, knows how snappily love can be weaponized by outlanders, and she feels a swell of defensive instinct stronger than any shock, covenanting quietly that whatever storms are coming, this child won't be contributory damage, and she tells RJ that if he's going to do this, he must do it completely, intimately, without shame, because half measures are what caused this pain. In the first place, and RJ nods again, alarmed but bent, because bringing his son to Los Angeles was no way meant to be temporary. It was a concession, a turning point, and latterly, when the boy falls asleep coiled up on the settee, his head resting against RJ's side with an unconscious trust that both heals and injures him, Brooke watches them from the doorway, seeing not just her son and grandson but two performances of the same boy at different points in life, one defended too much, the other not enough, and she realizes fatherhood does end, it multiplies, it deepens, it asks further of you when you suppose you've formerly given everything, and she still places a mask over the child, brushing his hair back with a tender-heartedness that feels spontaneous despite the misplaced times, and in that moment, she makes peace with the fact that her family story has taken a turn she no way anticipated, one that will challenge her, expose them all, and force delicate exchanges with people who wouldn't understand, but it's also a story embedded in love, defective and alarmed but real, and as RJ looks up at her, gratefulness and fear colliding in his eyes, Brooke eventually allows herself a small, tired smile and tells him they will face this together, not because it'll be easy, not because it wouldn't hurt, but because handling is no longer an option. Morning arrives sluggishly, cautiously, as if the house itself is doubtful whether it's allowed to move forward after the night that changed everything, and Brooke wakes on the settee with a stiff neck and blown eyes, disoriented for a moment until memory crashes back in full force, bringing with it the image of a small boy asleep under her roof and the knowledge that her family is no longer what it was, and she sits up still, hearkening to the muted sounds of movement down the hall, RJ's voice low and gentle as he speaks to his son in the kitchen, the meter strange yet unmistakably maternal. And Brooke feels a strange pang in her casket at the sound because she realizes she has no way heard RJ like this before, no way heard him speak with that careful tolerance, that spontaneous authority softened by love, and when she walks into the kitchen, she finds them at the counter, the boy perched on a copper light eating cereal while RJ stands beside him, one hand resting protectively on his reverse, and they both look up when Brooke enters, the child's eyes lighting up in a way that both warms and devastates her, and she forces a smile, asking how he slept, asking if he likes strawberries because she has some she can cut up, eager to do commodity, anything, that feels useful in this new reality, and as they eat together, the mundane normality of breakfast feels surreal, as if the macrocosm is daring them to believe life can continue indeed after a verity like this, and RJ watches Brooke precisely, staying for the other shoe to drop, staying for wrathfulness to resurface, for judgment, for the lecture he knows he deserves, but rather he sees her observing his son with an admixture of curiosity and reverence, as though she's studying a phenomenon she's hysterical might be taken down if she questions it too nearly, and latterly, when the boy steps down to explore the vicinity, Brooke eventually turns to RJ, her voice low and firm as she tells him this cannot remain contained within these walls, that there are people who need to know, exchanges that cannot be laid over. And RJ knows exactly who she means, knows that bringing his son to Los Angeles was only the first disclosure in a series that will ripple outward, touching his father, their extended family, their professional lives, the public, and the press, and the study makes his stomach knot, but Brooke doesn't soften her station, reminding him that secretiveness formerly stole enough times, and if he tries to hide now, he'll only educate his son that he's commodity to be shamed of. And those words land harder than any blameworthiness, because RJ has spent time stewing exactly that outgrowth, and he promises her he wouldn't hide presently, indeed if the consequences are brutal, indeed if people judge him, indeed if it costs him everything except the one thing that matters most, and Brooke nods, accepting the pledge but knowing pledges alone cannot undo the history, and throughout the day, as phone calls are made and plans tentatively formed, the boy drifts in and out of their route, occasionally asking innocent questions that cut deeper than any battle, asking if this means he can stay, asking if he can go to academy then, asking if grandma will come to his games, and each question is a memorial that this isn't just about RJ's redemption or Brooke's shock, it's about a child's structure prospects in real time, prospects they cannot go to break, and when Brooke eventually sits down with him alone in the autumn light, she tells him gently that some effects may take time, that grown-ups occasionally move pokily than kiddies, but that her love for him is tentative, not temporary, not commodity he has to earn, and the relief on his face is so immediate it nearly breaks her again, because she realizes how precisely he has learned to measure affection, how rehearsed he's at guarding himself, and that knowledge energies a quiet determination in her to come a constant presence, not a novelty, not a late addition, but a grandmother in every sense of the word. And latterly that evening, when RJ's father arrives, the air in the room shifts incontinently, pressure thickening as RJ stands with his son beside him, repeating the words that have formerly rewritten his life formerly, watching them land again with equal force, and Brooke watches from the sidelines as shock gives way to wrathfulness, confusion, unbelief, and ultimately, reticent acceptance, realizing that this pattern will repeat again and again with different faces, different responses, and that RJ will have to stand in the fire every time. And when the house eventually empties and prostration settles over them like a mask, Brooke sits alone in her bedroom, reflecting on the strange way grief and joy have entwined, grieving the times she lost, the moments she no way witnessed, the interpretation of fatherhood she allowed was complete, while contemporaneously feeling an expanding love that makes room for commodity entirely new. And she acknowledges, maybe for the first time, that this disclosure has forced her to defy her own once miscalculations, the times she pushed RJ too hard, the prospects that may have made him feel he'd to be perfect or threat losing her blessing, and that consummation humbles her, because secrets don't live in a vacuum, they grow in the murk created by fear, and as days turn into weeks, the adaptation is neither smooth nor simple. Captions crop, whispers circulate, and RJ faces public scrutiny that paints him as both villain and victim. But through it all, his son remains his anchor, resting him in a way nothing differently ever has, and Brooke becomes an unanticipated guard, fiercely defending the child against invasive questions, setting boundaries, using her influence not for image control but for protection, and sluggishly, gradually, a meter forms, one erected on academy drop-offs, awkward parent-school-teacher meetings, participated feasts, and conditional traditions. And one evening, months latterly, as Brooke watches RJ help his son with schoolwork at the dining table, their heads bent together in attention, she feels a quiet certainty settle in her casket, a verity forged through pain and perseverance, that families aren't defined by perfection or timing but by what they choose to face together. And while the crack of the secret may no way completely heal, it has come a scar that tells a story not just of treason, but of courage, responsibility, and love strong enough to survive being hidden. And as Brooke looks at the boy who entered her life through shock and anguish and now feels as though he has always belonged, she understands that the words that formerly set her in place didn't destroy her family, they converted it, and in that metamorphosis, despite the heartache, commodity profoundly mortal and continuing has been born. Time does what it always does in the fate of Bouleversement, it moves forward without authorization, carrying everyone with it whether they're ready or not. And as another season settles over Los Angeles, Brooke finds herself noticing the small, quiet ways their new reality has taken root, the way an redundant pack now rests by the frontal door, the way the refrigerator is grazed with foods she no way used to buy, the way horselaugh sounds different when it belongs to a child who formerly was only as a secret, and there are still moments when the weight of what was lost presses in on her suddenly, like when she stumbles upon an old print of RJ at the same age his son is now. Their resemblance so striking it feels like time folding in on itself, and she allows herself those moments of grief without shame, understanding now that loving what's doesn't bear erasing what should have been, and RJ, for his part, is still learning how to live without the constant fear of being discovered, still catching himself bracing for judgment that no longer comes as frequently as it formerly did, still waking some nights in fear before flashing back that his son is down the hall, safe, known, and real. And on those nights he sits on the edge of the boy's bed and watches him sleep, resting himself in the simple verity that he's then now, that presence, amiss as it may be, is the one thing he can give completely, and the boy, who is acclimated with the adaptability that both inspires and unsettles the grown-ups around him, begins to relax into the idea that this stability might last, testing boundaries the way children do when they feel safe enough to believe they can, pushing back, speaking up, asking for further. And Brooke recognizes those actions not as problems but as progress, signs that he's no longer living in a constant state of tone monitoring. And one autumn, as she watches him run across the yard, debonair and loud, she realizes with a unforeseen clarity that love has done what secretiveness no way could, it has allowed him to be a child rather of a secret to be managed, and that consummation strengthens her resoluteness to no way let fear mandate the terms of their family again. indeed when it would be easier, indeed when public opinion shifts, indeed when old injuries resurface in unanticipated exchanges or strained silences, and there are still hard days, days when RJ is brazened by his own remorse, when he wonders if his son will one day begrudge him for the times they lost, days when